You're listening to Out of the Box, a place for marketers to get inspired, get going, and break out of the box.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Jess Overton, and you're listening to Out of the Box, the marketing podcast exploring out-of-the-box approaches to marketing and growth. Today, I'm joined by Andre Kempe, founder and CEO of Admiral Media. Andre, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Jess.
And a pleasure. So, Andre, you are founder, CEO of Admiral Media. I know that you guys were nominated for Best Mobile App Marketing Agency of the Year in 2020 at APS in Berlin. Among other awards that you've gotten, you are an industry expert. But I'd like to know a little bit more about your bona fides. Tell me your history. Where did you come from?
Well, my career started a long time ago. I'm not very proud of it, that it's already that long, but I started with ringtones, Nokias and these kind of things. And at some point, a friend of mine, or a business contact of mine actually, reached out and asked me if I want to join his startup in Berlin, which was called TradeMob, and do some Excel stuff for them. And this is how it all started. I basically created the entire campaign management department for TradeMob that time, before I went to Lavu and headed the entire performance marketing, and then jumped into various other startups doing similar things.
I've interviewed a couple of other people on this podcast who got their starts in ringtones and in the old Nokia days, and there is so much knowledge in that group of people, because you've really seen everything, right? You've seen how the world has developed, how performance marketing has come to be, the changes. It's really quite amazing.
Yeah, we've seen the good and the bad.
Exactly. Tell me a little bit about Admiral Media. How do you approach, or how does the company approach marketing, and how do you innovate?
Well, so Admiral Media is a performance marketing agency. We basically started based on my origins in performance marketing with app marketing, like the majority of projects that we managed on paid social or Google and other platforms were promoting apps. And what happened now is that we got more and more requests from clients in the e-commerce or lead gen space. So we branched out into this part of performance marketing as well. And basically the team is now almost 20 people. We are fully remote, thanks COVID. But we want to also keep it like that. We don't plan to create an office or something. And we basically not only run campaigns on paid social and search, we also do all the consulting work that comes with it when it comes to tracking and reporting and event management and these kind of things. And we have a team of designers. We help with influence acquisition. So we basically provide the entire marketing stack that you need to be successful on any channel in the end of the day. About your question, how we innovate, I think innovation comes from curiosity. And I've seen it in my own development, in my career, and how I approach app marketing, or how I did approach app marketing and other things. It always started with curiosity. And I encourage my team to develop such curiosity themselves and look into things out of, basically like your title, like think out of the box, right? If you see something happening in your own social feed, if you see something that interests you out of a sudden, then follow that path, right? Dig into this rabbit hole. How can you apply this? Ask yourself how you can apply this to your clients' campaigns and so on. And this is how you basically start innovating your campaigns, and how you discover the latest hot shit that's out there, right? And I think that's very important.
Absolutely. I think institutional curiosity,
yes,
is certainly something that definitely has been in marketing a driving force, and I'm happy to hear that it's the trend at Admiral Media as well. I want to pick up on something that you said there, which was specifically around reporting, and dig in a little bit there to talk about what's been going on over the last couple of years, in the changes in privacy. For those listening at a future date, perhaps, we're now talking on the 22nd of February, not that long after Google really sort of announced their privacy sandbox. You said in my research, I found a quote that said, "Data-hungry marketing teams have been put on a diet." I really like that turn of phrase. And now that we're going into a period where perhaps we're going to have to be a little bit more lean on the data front, what do you think in the last couple of years has taken a back seat as marketing teams have really just relied on metrics and KPIs?
Well, as I mentioned, I'm quite long in the industry, and I've visited conferences every week, every 2 weeks. I was on a meetup or whatever, right? So I've seen people developing in that space as well. Many of them are friends now, but the conversations have changed over the years, right? And the past years, it was extremely data-driven. Like every conversation started with which KPIs, which metrics, how do you measure, how do you track? Every conversation was like that. So we sort of became, how do you say that, data professors, right? So we specialized more and more into LTV prediction models and whatnot. Sometimes I felt like, okay, I should not have skipped my math class sometimes to still stay in the space. But I figured one more thing that is what I figured way more important than just becoming a data analyst myself is we forgot to talk about marketing. So one very important part in that whole process is that you still invest millions of dollars every month for eyeballs. But those eyeballs are not machines, right? Those are people, and you put your brand in front of them. So what we tend to forget here is that we have to tell a story, that we have to drag the same people over months through the sales cycle to get them converted into our products very often. Of course, we look into day zero ROAS and I don't know what other KPIs, but in the end of the day, you're trying to build a long-term brand, right? And this only develops if you put emphasis on your messaging, on your visual identity, and these kind of things. And I think those things have taken a backseat in the past years, and they become more and more important again in our conversations since tracking has changed, and we have to think about long-term effects.
So really, it sounds like what you're talking about there is the sort of that brand adoption arc of awareness, and then through those, I don't know, it's usually 6 or 7 interactions, right, until really a consumer adopts the brand and starts to engage, and only then do you start measuring those down funnel events, looking at the sort of the hardcore data of things.
100%. I mean, there's certainly enough studies out there that prove that a strong brand converts better and faster, right? But we have forgotten about this in the past years. But since tracking has changed and we rely more and more on immediate conversions, a strong brand can only help you with exactly that problem. And I think that's happening now.
So talk to me a little bit more about those practical aspects. We've got a lot of marketing managers, UA managers that listen to this podcast. How can they take the idea of quote unquote real marketing with less data and really turn it into a functional strategy?
I think we talk about less data, but actually this means more KPIs. This is at least my experience in the past months. The problem that I faced is we certainly have less access to individual and personalized data and these kind of things, but we have to look in way more tables now. We have to look into way more KPIs out of a sudden, just because there's disparity between Android and iOS, and now also web, which becomes more and more important to app products nowadays for various reasons. But to put this in a functional setup, let's say, as a user acquisition manager, you have to challenge your design team. You have to challenge your head of marketing in terms of not only providing budgets and is it the right way to follow this path of KPIs or something. You also have to ask them, like, is it the right approach in terms of communication? Is that the right message at the right time here? what effect does it have when we suddenly change the core message to be completely different in all the ads that we have. And one thing we as marketers also very often ignore is product development. I see a lot of products, not only apps, try to enter a bigger market or gain a bigger market share by adding more features, for example, right? So one good example is maybe weight loss apps. So they focused a lot on a certain feature, how you could lose weight. But out of a sudden, they offer steps tracking, they offer water tracking, they offer, I don't know what else they come up with in next month. But this leads to some development in user perception that you are not the specialist in weight loss anymore. And this has a long-term effect, meaning, again, conversion rates probably decline, meaning your KPIs will certainly look worse on campaigns because of tracking issues.
Interesting.
So there's a correlation between those things.
So how do you then think of product development? What would the natural next step for that weight loss app be?
I think we tend to think very short term because we have to gain market share, right? We get investments, we have to spend the money, we have to be the biggest in the place. But we forget that long-term success comes from patience. And if you want to position yourself as the weight loss app, as an example, to say in that example, you have to reinforce that message constantly over years until people recognize, yeah, this was the weight loss app, and this is the brand name attached to it. And I think what happens here is if this, for example, weight loss app adds more and more features, it's diluting its positioning in the market and loses this connection between being the weight loss app and being recognized as such. And I think this has a strong effect on conversion rates on the long run. Back to the tracking topic and KPIs, since iOS forces us to look into day zero conversions, strong brand has to convert right away and can convert right away. Not so strong brands struggle with that, right?
Right, absolutely. But still, even with sort of the reduction in the data, you're talking about looking at even more data points and even more KPIs, despite the fact that obviously granular data has sort of disappeared or has certainly become lessened with what's happened in ATT, and who knows what's going to happen with the Google Privacy Sandbox. But can you talk a little bit more about the growth loop for performance marketing and how data plays a role within that growth loop nowadays with the new reality?
Well, maybe to give a short context here, the growth loop is basically a framework that we have developed internally. And we have created an ebook that's at the moment, we are planning a version 2 of this, is having like 25 pages describing how we work internally to achieve the success for our clients, right? So this gives a lot of details, how you set up a team, how you structure competences, where you start when you have never done performance marketing, what are the pitfalls where you should look into. So it's basically giving you some guidance on how to run successful performance marketing. That's the growth loop in general. In this new era of tracking and measurement, the growth loop this part plays a big role in the growth loop, because the starting point for most of the projects is, or when we get involved in projects, is tracking. That's the first thing we do. Like, how is the setup, right? Without proper tracking setup, you can't measure anything, you can't build a proper reporting, but also you can't feed information back to your partners, such as ironSource, Facebook, Google, and you name them. And their algorithms cannot learn from those data points, right? And the less data points we get, the more important it gets that our setup is fine. So the growth loop starts with exactly that. after planning of campaigns and budgeting and these kind of things, we look into the technical stack and setup. We make sure that there is tracking partners integrated, the ones we need for the different channels, that the events are mapped as they should be. For example, a start trial event in your measurement partner should be start trial in Facebook. And is it sending this event? Is it tracking properly? So all these kind of things. So this plays a big role in our growth loop framework, and it hasn't really changed since the introduction of iOS 14. To be honest, it's really just adding a little bit more complexity when you do all those checkups and setups for iOS 14 events and conversion values.
Gotcha. Are there common mistakes that you see in those sorts of early stages of setting up the tracking or the reporting based on all of those different platforms? Is there a common denominator that you see with many of your clients?
There are multiple. I think one or two of the major problems that we face when we enter new clients, and when that's very often the moment they realize something didn't work, so let's call for help. And this is the moment when they reach out to us, right? And we figure in exactly that moment that one of the common problems they have is to understand how they can use the different tracking tools for different purposes. As an example, you're using an MMP like AppsFlyer, Adjust, and the other ones for not only feeding data back to the platforms, but also for neutral reporting, let's say. And here's already the very first problem. The events there's a complete mess up in setup. Android and iOS are not having the same events. They are not mapped properly between the different platforms. So the Facebooks and Googles learn completely different things from the data that we send them from Android and iOS, although it's the same app. And then there's also Firebase, which plays even a different role when I want to use Google Ads, right? And here's a lot of problems going on already. And then another big issue is very often the existing team that is working on the project. Usually the CEO, founder, or VP marketing or whatever does not have, or very often in our case at least, does not very often have the background in all those technical things. So what happened here is that they hire people that claim to have such background, but they were not able to challenge that properly, right? So they basically trust the input that they get from their employees and colleagues. And this is in many cases very wrong, to be honest. So, and that's where they hire then an agency, and let's say who buys cheap pays twice, right?
Absolutely. Well, it's always good. I try and get at least a couple of good tips in each one of our episodes, practical tips that people can take home. I think this is probably the first time we've done common mistakes, but no less valuable, certainly. I want to loop back to something you said previously when you were talking about channels and where to focus. As you said something about diversifying into web campaigns. And I wanted to pick up on that one because it's not something, certainly on this podcast or in my day-to-day, that really I hear talking about. So talk to me a little bit more about diversifying into web.
There's various reasons why apps have started looking into web acquisition. One thing is obviously payment stuff, right? Payment related things. One example was Apple and Google were taking the cut. It's a long time ago, it was 30%. They reduced this to 15% at some point, but still a lot, right? Apart from those high fees, they also had problems with subscriptions on those platforms, iOS and Android, because every time a subscription renewed, users got notifications. Do you really want to renew the subscription, cancel or not, right? So this happened quite frequently. And one workaround was to acquire customers on web, use maybe, for example, a different payment method like PayPal or something, And then you got rid of those notifications, and you even didn't have to pay 15 or even 30%, right? So the fees were much lower, renewals were improved, these kind of things. So this was like, in most cases, a starting point of why they acquired customers on web.
Mm-hmm.
But then lately, I think it started with most of the clients that we have when Apple and Google reduced their cut to those 15%. They still considered web acquisition as an important part because you're still reaching a different type of audience that still may convert becoming an active app user, although they were surfing on a news website, right? So you're still putting your eyeballs in front of people that haven't seen your ads before, because when you promoted an app on Facebook, for example, it was usually only shown to app users of Facebook, right? So this was like a repetitive loop.
Right.
App users stay app users, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you started advertising for a web front end, let's say, where people could convert, you reached additional audience that you haven't reached before. So this is definitely a growth opportunity here.
So I'm interested, I want to keep on this trend of growth opportunities. You talked about finding new audiences on web, and that certainly makes a lot of sense to me. We saw with Facebook's, or I guess Meta's Q4 results, that TikTok is hot on their heels. Talk to me a little bit about how you guys have expanded or have tested the waters in TikTok.
I can't remember when we started with TikTok. It was actually, we were probably one of the first agencies, at least in Europe, running on TikTok. It was a situation where you were just not able to create your own TikTok account. So we acquired a lot of clients that needed help with that. And they asked us to run those campaigns for them even. And we figured that on TikTok, you can create tremendous success. Not only because reach is cheaper, CPMs, CPCs are definitely cheaper compared to Facebook and Insta. But on the other hand, the algorithm works completely different to what we have been used to, right? So on Facebook and Instagram, you have to imagine you launch a campaign, you see a certain result, and you can slowly improve by adding better ads, training the algorithm a little bit. So there's like a linear improvement possible, let's say. You barely have a hockey stick situation with an uptick or downtick, right? It's pretty much plannable, let's put it this way. On TikTok, it's a complete opposite. TikTok does not have 15 years of data about everyone on the planet, surfing and shopping and who's friends with and connections on WhatsApp and everything, right? TikTok doesn't have that. So their algorithm by nature works differently. What happened here and what we faced is we launched our TikTok campaigns, classic targeting options, demographics, interests. We built lookalikes, everything pretty much similar. But what really made a difference is the ads. We started acquiring content creators and asked them to produce videos, which we then used as ads. And we suddenly saw performance overnight with like 1,000% difference compared to anything we've seen before, right? So the budget went through the roof, CPIs went down, ROAS was amazing, and we were able to recreate this success multiple times through real TikToks, right? So this was an important investment from our side and a key learning that we had on that channel, and it's still easy to reproduce. One of the most important tactics here. And when I look at Meta versus TikTok, they both struggle with iOS, but TikTok was way faster in adapting to that new, I would say, landscape of tracking and measurement.
I wanna dig a little bit into that topic of user-generated content, because I think it's a really interesting point that you bring up. And I want to ask you two questions about that. And the first is, how do you manage the outreach or the generation of that content? How do you get to these TikTok creators in the first place? And my second question is, is this something that you guys are going to try and replicate on other platforms, or do you think that this is going to be a TikTok specific strategy?
Okay, let's say the research, outreach, negotiation, and everything. What's really helpful here is TikTok provided a creators marketplace. On top of that, you can still just scroll through your own feed and search through hashtags and just reach out to everyone you find. But the creator marketplace is always a good starting point. Other platforms don't have that, or they have it very rudimentary. Facebook also has something similar, but it's really bad from my perspective. Also in the selection of influencers that you have there. Snapchat, I still don't understand why they don't provide something similar. It's really hard to research anything on Snapchat when it comes to such content stuff. But that's really just the creator part, and manageable and easy because this is classic influencer management. Let's say you collect a lot of profiles, you negotiate with the client, is that the right type of profile, then you reach out to those guys with their email addresses and Instagram accounts, what they have, depends. Standard process, let's say. What's different is you mentioned user-generated content, and that's from my perspective not creator content. That's real users, that's active users that are in your product, and that's a different beast from my perspective. Here, I figured we are working together with a startup and also an agency, but they sort of built a platform around that user-generated content, and this is super helpful. They basically reach out. So let's say I'm this weight loss app, and I have a really strong community on Facebook, as an example. There's a group where they are sharing their latest recipes, whatever, and discuss how many kilos they've lost. Now this startup reaches out through this Facebook group and offers them, hey guys, here's a link, share your experience with the weight loss app and you may win $100 Amazon voucher or something like that. And they get like 100 videos out of the box from real users that are convinced from your product. And they are talking into the camera, like how great this product is. They have lost 40 kilos, only 2 weeks, super healthy, blah, blah, blah. And here, all the licensing, everything is done through their platform. The video is recorded. You can use this video in your ads on any other platform, whatever you want. Tremendous success, easy to manage. You don't have to actively reach out to everyone individually. So that's a perfect fit here, to be honest. So I see those two types of content, and they both work on any platform in the end.
Cool. So it sounds like you guys are really sort of at the start of your journey, perhaps with user-generated content. Is that right? So you're more your current activity is tending more towards the sort of influencer creator content, also starting to mix in a little bit of that user-generated content.
Yeah, it's we are in the middle of the process. Let's say we do this since quite some time, but not at large scale, because in the end of the day, there's always a client who has to sign something off. And this blocks us from really nailing it, let's say. Very often it's not agreed by the brand department or the CMO or whatever, with the look of the people, with how they speak. The audio is maybe not perfect. So it's real content, right? So it's often not perfect. Right. And not brand fit, at least not 100%. And then you struggle getting things live very often.
Interesting. Well, certainly a lot to investigate there for the marketers listening at home. There's definitely some really interesting takes there. I wanna ask you about one last diversification. The Super Bowl, we all know and love for their commercials. One specifically that we had that was a little bit different this year was Coinbase's QR code. What do you think is the future around QR codes? What do you think of this ad? I want to hear anything and everything you have to say about that.
There's many things you could say about this. It was definitely smart. Let's put it this way. No one has ever done this. No CMO would have ever signed. I just talked about this. Like CMOs struggle signing things off, but here someone had balls, so to say. Yeah. I mean, you spent really a few $1 million to get this on screen, right? And such an ad, you have to make a big bet here. But apparently they placed their bet really well. when it comes to download success, right? We all saw the news, 20 million downloads, I don't know what, website crashed and so on. But then I thought, look, this is a crypto app. It's public. The trading volume is public and everything. And I looked this up a couple of days later, and maybe they've really made 20 million downloads, but I didn't see any uptick in trade volume on their platform. So I wondered, maybe this was an amazing ad in terms of brand and awareness, and also making QR codes popular. But getting active users over the line, I'm not so sure. I mean, there's certainly some hurdles to get like your profile approved on a crypto app. Like you have to provide a lot of information to actually trade reasonable amounts of dollars, right?
Right.
And this may also take a couple of days to get approved. So there's certainly a delay in measuring success here. But with this volume and this investment, I would have expected a different spike in trade volume, let's say. But apparently this didn't happen. So I wonder how successful this really was when it comes to measurable success. And this brings me to the question about how do I see QR codes? I think they're extremely helpful, and they come into our lives more and more. I just ordered a couple of intelligent bulbs to have some light in my home, and they all have QR codes, and so it's everywhere now, right? And I think there's no way around them anymore. Having them used in marketing, I haven't seen any successful campaign yet, except printed vouchers sent to my home, and I want to unlock that voucher. So there's still a lot of room to grow, let's say. I haven't seen really smart use cases around QR codes yet. I mean, I see even in Germany, I've seen QR codes in the S-Bahn station, but so tiny that I would have to cross the line and risk my life to scan it, right? So it's very often also not thought through when it comes to offline initiatives. Yeah.
Interesting. So there's, in addition to the tracking, there's also some operational challenges that we need to think about on how we can actually use those QR codes. That's a good tip. I hadn't thought about that. Very cool. Well, Andre, this has been a really informative episode. I've taken a huge amount from our conversation. I asked the same question of all my guests, and unfortunately, I've taken the Coinbase ad out of the mix. But I'd love to hear from you about a recent out-of-the-box marketing campaign that you've seen or have been a part of.
There's very few out there, right? And I think Coinbase was really a great thing to mention here for being an out-of-the-box marketing thing. Oh, by the way, have you seen the tweets? And now I think it's even on the New York Post or something that the Coinbase CEO didn't attribute the idea of the ad to the original agency that pitched it.
Oh, really? No, I didn't see that.
There's something going on. So the poor agency, it was their idea, but Coinbase CEO apparently claimed it was his idea, or at least his team's idea.
Right.
So yeah, that's a different story. Anyways, out of the box marketing that I've seen, I think the latest trends in NFTs is showing us a really good or a really interesting development. Mm-hmm. We as Admiral Media even got pulled into NFT marketing lately. So we are promoting some collections to be sold very soon. And this opened my eyes a little bit because it's completely different from what I've seen in the past with app and e-commerce marketing. The things that have happened around Adidas and Nike acquiring NFT creators lately and releasing their own collections and these kind of things, they are really amazing marketing initiatives from my perspective, because it's not only a new type of revenue stream potentially, but it's also an amazing CRM play. If I'm owning a certain NFT, then I get access to special things. So I believe this is an amazing marketing play for these brands, and every other brand should jump on that topic as well, from my perspective. I think that's the newest thing coming back to my initial sentences about curiosity, that's definitely something that I picked up and want to get into more and more.
Very cool. Well, I definitely there is so much going on in the NFT space that it's hard to keep up. But I will definitely I'll definitely be keeping my eye on things because I agree, a very, very interesting space. Andre, thank you for coming on the show today. It's been a really, really great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Same for me. Thanks.